Purdue football news. Welcome to the Golden Black Radio pregame show as we get you set for Saturday's kickoff. Now here's your host, Kyle Charters.
The Boilermakers hit the road for the second straight week, looking for an upset for the second straight week. It's Purdue at Maryland at noon on Saturday. I'm Kyle Charters, Tom Dienhart here right now. We'll talk to Brian Newberg and Alan Karpik as well for the Golden Black Radio pregame show. Tom, Purdue a slight underdog in this one, Maryland basically getting the home 3 points. Purdue looking to do it for 2 weeks in a row after upsetting Minnesota up in Minneapolis last week. This seems like a Boilermaker team with a couple of games having won in a row that has a little bit of momentum, but we do know in college football that can be a fleeting thing as well. This will be a challenging contest on Saturday.
Yeah, the offense, Kyle, in particular for Maryland, could pose some real issues for Purdue. The quarterback, Tungalovoa, he's a guy who can not only throw it, but he's also a dangerous runner. He's got a nice fleet of receivers. Raheem Jarrett is the one to watch, Kyle, a former five-star prospect. Two good running backs. This team, again, is more than just throwing the ball. They're freshman running backs. One guy's their thunder, one guy's their lightning, so they can come at you a lot of different ways. I guess the good news for Purdue, Kyle, is their defense, right? It's playing pretty well right now. Get a load of this. Purdue's the only Big Ten team that's allowed only one rush of over 20 yards this season, Kyle, and they've still yet to allow a 100-yard rusher. So the Purdue defense is playing very well, and it's going to have to continue to do so if they want to have a shot to win in College Park.
And, Tom, as we know, that defense is getting a little bit healthier. It looks pretty positive that linebacker, nickel, safety, man of all trades, Jalen Graham will be back on Saturday. You wrote about it this week that Corey Trice looked better after ditching the knee braces than he had all season. Purdue got Reese Taylor back. I mean, it does seem like this is a defense that A, is playing pretty well, and B, is getting some guys back, which should behoove the Boilermakers in this contest against the Terps offense.
Yeah, you're right. Corey Trice, he looks like he's finally rounding back into form, which is obviously a great thing for Purdue. They got Reese Taylor back last week too, Kyle, so they've got three cornerbacks they feel comfortable with. But, of course, the biggie, like you talked about, is Jalen Graham, number 6. All signs point to him playing on Saturday. Coach Braum basically said as much after practice on Thursday. Again, we all understand the impact he can have on any game. Kyle, he's only played one this year. That was the opener against Penn State. He suffered the impact fracture on one of his tibias, missed the last 4 games. I heard he had a chance to play last week. It was a close call. It didn't happen. But, again, I think we're going to see him Saturday. And he's a guy that rarely leaves the field. The one question, Kyle, is you kind of wonder how much can he really go on Saturday, having not played for a month now. So that'll be interesting to see if he's how well he holds up, seeing his first extended action since September 1st.
Yeah, but 40 snaps is I'm not real smart, Tom. But 40 snaps is greater than 0.
Exactly. Half a game. Anything to get at him is great.
Yeah.
But what a boon to that defense. So, yeah, like I talked about from the top, they're going to need him to try to slow down this Maryland offense.
Purdue will have Aiden O'Connell back under center. It sounds like, again, Jeff Braum declared him good to go on Thursday evening. We estimated, not sure anybody officially put a number on it, that it felt like to us maybe he was around 75%. With the combination of the injury and then just the lack of preparation against the Golden Gophers, it would seem that this week maybe we'll get an Aiden O'Connell, a version of him that is closer to 100%. It might not be 100%, but is closer to 100%. He will at least have gotten an opportunity to prepare a little bit this week, and that'll be huge for Purdue in a game that I think most people anticipate is a little bit of a track meet.
Yeah. Maryland's averaging 35 points, about number 3 or 4 in the Big Ten. So Purdue's going to have to probably score close to 30, I think, to win it. And yeah, boy, to get Aiden back to anywhere where he was at in early September would be a heck of a nice asset for this offense to have moving forward. We all know the issues they've had the last couple of weeks. Austin Burton against Florida Atlantic, no real big explosive plays. Aiden gets to play last week in Minnesota, no real big explosive plays. Purdue found a way to win both those games, but as they wade deeper into the teeth of this schedule, Kyle, the competition continues to get tougher and tougher, and this offense is going to have to be on its toes and hitting on all 6 cylinders. And one of those cylinders, again, is getting big plays in the pass game. I suspect Maryland's going to do like Minnesota did, Kyle, probably play that two deep shell safety look, not wanting to get beat deep. Going to be plenty of opportunity for Dylan Downing and Devin Mockeby to run again. But again, if Aiden's feeling better, Kyle, I suspect he's still going to take some shots downfield, which still was really lacking last week.
Yeah, but if you've got a home run threat as a running back, man, that changes things a little bit, doesn't it? Because if they play that shell and you've got a running back like in Devin Mockeby who, is starting to find himself a little bit, and he can chunk off yardage at 10, 15, 20, 68 yards a clip. That changes what defenses can do against you.
Yeah, you're right. And again, we're going to see a lot of Mockeby and a lot of Dylan Downing once again, Kyle. Jeff Brom on Thursday said King Daru was highly doubtful he was going to play. So again, not that Purdue's had any fall off. Downing and Mockeby have done very well. And you're exactly right. They brought some balance to this Purdue attack, and we all know that's going to make it so much more deadly, Kyle. If defenses suddenly have to worry about the Purdue ground game, that plays right into what the Boilermakers want to do. Yeah. They can get that defense on its heels and throw some deep balls at Charlie Jones and company. So credit that Purdue offense. Again, the run game, Kyle, they've been really creative in how they've tried to scheme things this year, using the 2 tight end sets with an extra offensive lineman. They've used a fullback at times as well. They've used Marcus Bowen in the backfield as a lead blocker too. So they've tried to do some different things to keep that ground game charged up.
Let's take a break. We'll come back, get Maryland's view of things. We'll also talk to Brian Newberg, his perspective. Alan Carpet coming up to talk a little bit of Big Ten football, a little historical view. We'll look back at the Maryland series, which has not been all that exciting for the Boilermakers over the years, including the game a few years ago that was ugly over there. We'll do all that and much more coming up on the Golden Black Radio pregame show.
Hello from News 18. I'm Storm Team 18 meteorologist David Seipel. The Boilermakers are traveling to College Park, Maryland for Saturday's football game. The weather is shaping up to be a fairly nice one for the Boilers. For those who will be tailgating in the morning, temperatures will be in the mid-50s and a west wind around 5 miles per hour. By kickoff in Maryland around noon, temperatures will be a comfortable 71 degrees with winds continuing to be out of the west at about 5 to 10 miles per hour with mostly to partly sunny skies. By the end of the game, temperatures will reach their highs at around 75 with a mix of clouds and sunshine. Overall, another perfect forecast will be in store for the Boilermakers as they take on Maryland. From News 18, I'm Storm Team 18 meteorologist David Seipel. Boiler up, hammer down.
Experience unparalleled comfort, service, and cuisine at the Whitaker Inn. This Midwestern oasis is perfect for a relaxing staycation or weekend getaway.
Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn.
It's time to break it down as we go in-depth about Purdue's opponent.
All right, we're pleased to be joined by Scott Green of the TerrapinSportsReport.com. Scott, of course, covers Maryland. Purdue's got a big game in College Park this weekend, noon Eastern time kickoff. And Scott, let's get right to it. Tell Purdue fans what they can expect from this Terrapin offense on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Leah Tagovailoa is kind of what makes that offense go. He's having a great season so far. He's setting all kinds of records at the school for most 300-yard games, most yards in a career. Just really rewriting the record books, essentially. They've got an experienced offensive line. I believe they're the only line in the Big Ten that returns all 5 starters. Actually, technically 6 starters from last year. So really experienced up front. But it all comes down to those playmakers. You look at the wide receiver group. Rakim Jarrett, he's a former Rivals 5-star. He's been terrific so far this season. He's a huge threat there out of the slot. Then you've got someone like Ja'Shawn Jones. He's very shifty. He's got some of the most fluid hips I've ever seen. Another big-time receiver. But, and one area that's kind of, I think, surprised some people, I think, is the running back group. Roman Hemby has been the guy, has been the starter this year. He's pretty much a home run threat every time he touches the ball. Very lightly recruited, but his brother played Division I football, so I think he kind of knew what he was getting into when he came in, and he's been terrific this season. And then if Hemby's the Lightning, Antoine Littleton is the Thunder. He came in as a pretty heralded guy himself. Almost 300-pound running back coming into Maryland, has really chiseled down his body, and he can really pound it between the tackles. But he showed last week he's got some speed too. Broke off a 68-yard run. So I think this offense is a little more balanced than people might expect. But obviously Tagovailoa is what makes it go. But there are a lot of weapons there, and there's a lot of experience up front.
What about the defense, Scott? What can we expect from that Terrapin defensive unit?
Yeah, the defense, they've been hurt a little bit. Their Mike linebacker, their middle linebacker, Ruben Hippolyte's been out the last couple of weeks. But they've got the true freshman Ja'Shawn Barham in there in the middle, and he's been terrific. Especially for a newcomer. The rest of the linebacker group, they've got some experience. Ahmad McCullough's been coming and playing in there. He's a 6-year guy. Then, up front, they've got a lot of older guys. Ami Finau, he's been there a couple years now, was a JUCO guy. And, they've got some more size than they've had in the past. They've got the two safeties have been terrific the last few weeks. You look at Dante Trader. He's a sophomore, I believe, out of Maryland. He's been really good. And then Bo Braid is another guy from Maryland. He was terrific the other day against Michigan State. And this is their first year for both of them starting, but they're really starting to come into their own. And that secondary is starting to look better and better every week. At the cornerback spot, you've got Jacorian Bennett. He came back for his senior year. He's been really good. Led the nation in pass breakups last year. Then you got a guy like Tarheeb Still. So yeah, I would say, and then Deontay Banks, who missed all of last year. So I'd say that secondary is the strength of the defense. But they've got some good young talent in the linebacker group as well. It's, all kind of coming together.
Okay, Scott, how do you see this game unfolding on Saturday? Maryland 4-1, Purdue 3-2, each squad coming off a nice victory.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. From what I've seen, it looks like Purdue's got some guys that are questionable, at some key positions, especially quarterback. I think it's going to be very close. I think Maryland might get a slight edge just because of their kicker, the special teams, and then the fact that they're at home. I think Maryland's playing well. I think they're going to pull it out, but I think it's going to be very close. I think it might be something along the lines of, say, 27-21, 27-24, but I think it could be a very close back-and-forth game.
Should be good, Scott. I'm looking forward to getting out there. I always love coming to College Park, seeing a football game in campus. Hopefully I'll run into you, and we appreciate you stopping by here and dropping some Terrapin knowledge on us, sir.
All right, anytime. Appreciate it.
At Purdue Federal Credit Union, it's about a relationship that goes where you go, wherever you are in life. A relationship that's committed to free financial wellness resources, lower fees, and innovative digital banking solutions. Because we believe in people helping people. Let's build your financial future together. Purdue Federal Credit Union, your trusted financial partner for life. Federally insured by NCUA.
On the far end of Main Street in downtown Lafayette, you'll find East End Grill. Industrial and classic, the restaurant is built like a steakhouse but handles like a bistro. East End Grill's menu includes creative starters, simple chopped salads, burgers, fresh fish and steaks, and the signature shrimp and grits. The staff prepares every item from scratch and emphasizes simple meals that incorporate fresh, local, and seasonal ingredients. A warm and inviting dining room features a cozy bar that includes a great selection of craft beer, inspired cocktails, and a robust and expanding wine list. Whatever your entertainment needs are, a cocktail at the bar, dinner with family, or a special event in the private dining room, the energized and attentive staff is here for you. East End Grill in downtown Lafayette, welcome to our table.
Broadcasting from Gold and Black World Headquarters, north of Purdue's campus, this is the Gold and Black Radio Pregame Show.
Let's bring in Brian Newberg to get his perspective on Purdue at Maryland on Saturday. Brian, if you go back to the victory against number 2 Iowa last year, Purdue is 5-2 now in games played away from Ross-Ade Stadium. That's a pretty good stretch. Of course, the Boilermakers lost at Ohio State and lost to Syracuse during that stretch, but they've won all the others that haven't been played in the home stadium. Purdue has some veteran players. I think that probably has something to do with it. It's got a quarterback who seems to not get rattled anywhere, but maybe in particular on the road. I don't know. You got any other theories for why Purdue seems to be able to play well in road environments, and even in road environments where they're not the favorite, like they were not last week? I mean, upwards of a 10-point underdog against the Gophers, and they will be a slight underdog, 3 points probably or thereabouts against Maryland on Saturday.
Yeah, I think a lot's probably gone into it. I think some of it's been matchups. Obviously, the signature win last year away from Ross-Ade Stadium was Iowa, and that's obviously a team, for whatever reason, Purdue always matches up well with, the way they run their offense versus the way Iowa runs its defense. Obviously, the bowl game was a big win for them under some strange circumstances. But generally, I think, people tend to say, and I think there's probably something to it, that when you're on the road, you're a little bit more insulated from everything around you. And maybe the level of discipline, the level of organization is a little bit, amped up, and that can help the product on the field some. It's probably a little bit easier to concentrate when you're in this sort of very controlled environment. And I think human nature too can be sometimes when everything's against you. It's kind of naturally that sort of, not to use a really bad cliche here, but that sort of circle the wagons kind of mentality. I can't speak to why Purdue has fared so well in that regard. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but I also think there's been some teams that they've played that are very beatable. Obviously, you've got Nebraska last year. That was in a bad place. Northwestern and Wrigley Field wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire last year. I don't mention that to take anything away from Purdue or anything like that, but that win against Minnesota this past weekend was a big one. Yeah. But also came right on the heels of Purdue going to Syracuse and getting called for some really bad penalties and kind of letting that game slip away. But kind of by and large, I think, it's had a little to do with matchups. It's probably had a lot to do with Purdue just being probably more focused, more organized, whatever term you want to use here.
The outlook in October looks a little bit different right now than it did at the start of the month, right? Because when you were starting the month, you're like, man, Purdue, this is a tough stretch. It could go 1-3, and that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. And now you look at Purdue won at Minnesota in an upset. It's got a chance Saturday against Maryland. It gets a Nebraska team at home that you felt like was, maybe that one sort of guarantee win. And now the Wisconsin thing is sort of like, what are the Badgers? Maybe that's not as insurmountable as what you sort of felt. So, just a few days ago, you were thinking, man, 1-3, and then you have to hope to recover a little bit in November. But I think the outlook, whether real or not, has changed here a little bit this month.
Yeah, I think Purdue obviously looked really good at Minnesota. That being said, they did overcome 3 turnovers, and they did only score 20 points. Yeah. Too. I don't know if you can necessarily bank on some of the things that happened against Minnesota happening every week from here on out. As good as Purdue looked in the running game against Minnesota, I don't think that's going to be an every week kind of deal for Purdue. I could be wrong, but I didn't see a lot of indications leading into Minnesota that was going to be something Purdue, that was going to be a strength for Purdue all season long here. I don't know if the defense is going to play that well every single week. I don't know if the other quarterback is going to make as many mistakes as Tanner Morgan surprisingly did. Also, Purdue deserves some credit for forcing some of those mistakes, but a few of them were just flat out mistakes. I think, obviously Minnesota didn't have its number one running back, who's a very good player as well. So some things happen that I don't know if you can necessarily extrapolate to the rest of the season. My point being that Purdue still got to keep getting better here. But having to get better being illustrated in a win is a hell of a lot better than having to get better being illustrated in a loss. Yeah. So I think that in college football, every week can kind of be a season unto itself. I think we've seen that in Purdue's results thus far alone. So I don't know if you want to really take anything for granted based off that one Minnesota game, but I do think Purdue looks like it's in a better place now than it did a week ago. Whether or not that's a complete transformation or whether or not that's simply in a kind of distortion of reality based off a very good win at Minnesota, I don't know. But yeah, Purdue, I mean, it's easy to feel a little bit better about Purdue right now than it was kind of coming out of that game prior to Minnesota, the FAU game.
Minnesota didn't have its running back? Man, TV should have mentioned that.
You'd think they would have.
All right, thanks, Brian.
No problem.
Let's take a break. We'll come back with more. This is Golden Black Radio. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner. Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group is your local farmland specialist. With decades of experience in Indiana agriculture, no one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange or simply buying and selling farmland, your local Acre Pro agent will walk the land with you and ensure the deal is done right. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185 to talk to your local land expert today. Again, 765-587-3185.
What else is going on around the league? Let's take a look. It's the Big Ten Roundup.
Let's hit the Big Ten Roundup. Take a look at 5 games outside of Purdue and Maryland that we will be looking at this weekend. Of course, there are only 5 other games in the Big Ten. Alan Karpik here with us to do that. All right, Al, let's take a look at that Friday night game. If you're listening to this on Saturday, you can make fun of us for our poor takes here. Although, not sure anybody cares outside of Lincoln and maybe to some extent Piscataway. Nebraska traveling to Rutgers. Nebraska's favored by 3 points on the road. I guess the Cornhuskers can get back to 500 and be 2-1 in the Big Ten, and that would be something, I suppose.
Well, I think it would be something because they come to West Lafayette in that situation, I guess, if they get the win. It is amazing to me that Nebraska's certainly their loyalty among the fan base has been tested. They continue to pass that test by filling stadiums. Now, it wasn't 100% full last week against Indiana, though it was a sellout. Nebraska still can't run the ball. It is their first true road game, but maybe that's a help for Nebraska. And Greg Schiano's he got his fighting words going against Ryan Day last week, but I think Nebraska will get out of this game alive. I think because Nebraska's got some decent talent. They just haven't shown it enough in games, and it will make for an interesting matchup next Saturday night in Ross-Ade. That is even made more interesting if Purdue could pull a mild upset over Maryland.
I don't want to hear about the sellout streak. Corporations just buying up those tickets anyway when they don't get it sold out.
I want the scan count there. I mean, I think that it is still pretty amazing, the fan base there. I'll give them that. But still, this is a team that in a program that is unfortunately for the Cornhuskers has a little bit of an inflated view of itself, and we'll find out who they get as a head coach here before long.
All right, noon kickoff on Saturday. Number 4 Michigan travels to Indiana. The Hoosiers have been exposed. It feels like here over the last couple of weeks, Michigan is a 22.5-point favorite down there in Bloomington. Oh, man, Indiana, even in its victories, didn't look very good. It looks worse in its losses, which there have been a couple in a row here. You just feel like trying to find 3 more wins for Indiana to get to the postseason is difficult. Really, one of those wins needed to be last week against Nebraska, and Indiana couldn't get it done. And this one's going to be quite difficult.
Yes, quite difficult. I mean, I think Indiana, you get a situation where they have been able to throw the football some, certainly with Connor Bazelak. Am I pronouncing that right? But he's a guy that has come in and done better than expected. And Michigan has not had much in the way of style points in its last 2 wins. But Michigan's a really solid football team, and I think that they win easily. Do they cover that? I don't know, but I think they have a pretty easy time of them up or down in Bloomington for this one.
3:30 kickoff in Evanston, Wisconsin, with interim head coach Jim Leonhard. Wow, that was a shocker last week. We'll head to take on the Wildcats of Northwestern. These two teams have not played well recently. Wisconsin a 10.5-point favorite, though. Did I see that they really have not played well in Evanston themselves recently? This could be a sort of a weird game. It's probably Leonard's job to lose here, right? I mean, as long as they go like 4-3, 5-2 here during this interim period, it feels like this is probably his job. But Wisconsin's been a weird team, obviously, and Northwestern's just been bad.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think over the last 8 or 9 meetings, Wisconsin has turned the ball over a lot against Northwestern. I think it's they're minus 13. So, Northwestern has been not good to say the least, and yet, but they have given Wisconsin fits, in times, and that's what makes this game interesting. I keep talking about. Wisconsin continues to turn the ball over. They've had 12 giveaways in the last 4 games. I think Northwestern could be a pitcher's duel, but I think that Wisconsin gets out of there alive. And I know you're going to ask this question. Maybe we talked about this last week. Has Purdue ever faced 2 interim coaches in consecutive weeks? And I don't think they have. And the Boilermakers have. They'll get the chance here on the 15th and the 22nd.
That would be almost impossible, I would think.
Yeah, it is. I'm being somewhat facetious, but I do think that Northwestern's not very good, and Wisconsin, I think, can run the football, though contrary to what we saw last week when they had 24 carries for a whopping 2 yards against the Red Grange-laden Illinois Fighting Illini.
Okay, 2 other games on the Big Ten schedule. If I would have asked you before the season started which was the big game in the Big Ten, would you have picked number 3 Ohio State at Michigan State or Iowa at Illinois? I'm guessing that you would have picked the Buckeyes and Sparty, but man, that other game is pretty intriguing, especially from a West Division point of view of the Big Ten. Let's start with Ohio State, Michigan State, since it's the 4 o'clock kick. Buckeyes favored by 27. Sparty's paying Mel Tucker a lot of money to not win football games this year after winning some last year.
True. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And again, it's hard to know. Certainly Michigan State was able to pull it together last year and have a great year for the most part, but we kind of saw where Michigan State really was when they came to West Lafayette. And of course, Mel Tucker in the COVID year did not have as good a year. So I don't know what that's Michigan State's problem. Michigan State's current problem, though, is trying to deal with Ohio State. And I think that the only advantage Michigan State has is it's playing at home, but there's no momentum for the Spartans in this one. And I think that Ohio State is starting to get things going. Got to think about last year. I think they beat Michigan State 56-7. Was it last year? And that was supposedly a good Michigan State team. So again, Ohio State's got to keep itself interested. That will be an interesting thing to watch over the next bit before Ohio State and Michigan seem to be an inevitable collision course. But I just don't see Michigan State staying in this game.
7:30, Iowa and Illinois. Big battle in the Big Ten West. Illinois is favored against Iowa by 3.5 points. The Illini have been pretty good. The quarterback play has been good. They can run the football. They can play defense. It just feels like if they win this game, A, Illinois will be ranked, but B, man, you have to consider the possibility that they might be the team to beat in the Big Ten West, especially when you start to look at the schedules a little bit. They get pretty well for one thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And when's the last time a guy has gone to coach at his alma mater, which this is this week, of course, Brett Bielema facing Iowa, and then going to coach against his former team in the last 2 weeks. I think Illinois, you have to look at them for being for real. Yes, Iowa's defense is still really good. Are good enough. They still, they just can't score. And I just wonder if that's going to happen in this situation where maybe Illinois is having kind of remember Purdue in 1997 under Joe Tiller, some things change and all of a sudden the magic starts happening. The schedule gets good and you win games. I think Illinois, again, we've used that 6-4 reference a lot. I don't know that it'll be 6-4, the final score, but I think Illinois can win this game, and maybe it's more of the 17-14 variety.
Well, in the transfer era, we have to recognize, and I think we're all probably still a little slow to do this, that you can go from horrible to pretty good in a short amount of time.
Absolutely.
Even in football.
Absolutely. And that's the advantages of programs like Purdue to some extent. Jeff Brom has done a good job in there, and there certainly has been the case in the right situation that you can get players, because there's a lot of really good players sitting on the second and third teams at some good schools that would sure like to play. But I also think Illinois, Chase Brown has been terrific. They've gotten good enough quarterback plays. You talk about the transfer situation. Illinois was so bad at quarterback the last couple of years that this gives them a chance. And I like Illinois in this game. And Illinois and Iowa was a pretty good sized rivalry between those two teams, especially at Illinois. I think that the fans, as much as the fans at Memorial Stadium can get jacked up, they're going to be jacked up this week.
That's the Big Ten Roundup.
Let's go back in time. With a historical look, here's Alan Karthik.
All right, now let's take a historical view at Purdue and Maryland. First, though, let's talk a little bit of Boilermakers on the East Coast. Of course, they'll play at Maryland at noon on Saturday. Didn't go well the last time Purdue went east this season, at least, with the loss to Syracuse.
Well, we were looking at games, and obviously we'll talk a little bit about the 16 game at Maryland, the loss at Syracuse. Now, Purdue did shut out UConn, by God, last year, 49-love. So we can't forget that. And that was the furthest East Coast win in the history of the program. Obviously, Purdue's played New York City a few times back in the 30s, had some success, not a lot of success. It has nothing to do with anything, but it might give you something to think about as you listen to this podcast that, it'd be good to win in the land of crab cakes. It'd be the first time the Boilermakers have won at Maryland if they do it.
There have been a couple of rough games against the Terps. Of course, Purdue won here a few years ago, but the 50-7 game in 2016 that you mentioned, sort of I always look at that as the marker that was the end of the Darrell Hazel era. I think he won a game after that, right?
He did. They beat Illinois in overtime, right?
Yeah, but this is the game. In my opinion, this is the game. I mean, 50-7, and that is, the game wasn't as close as the final score, really.
Right. I mean, they were getting – actually, it'd be your worst nightmare when looking at Saturday's game, because they had all those gashing runs. And I can't remember the guy that ran for over 200 yards for Maryland. But, yes, that was the official end of the Darrell Hazel era. Not that we're in the habit of bashing – Darrell, but Darrell thought after he beat Illinois in overtime that he might be able to survive the guillotine. He didn't the following week when after the loss to Iowa, another game that was not as close as the 49-35 score, the guillotine fell, unfortunately, for Darrell. That was a bad one. But you're going to mention
Purdue played Maryland in the Champs Sports Bowl. I think the final of that game was 24-7. It also felt like it could have been like 100-7. Purdue, there's two things I remember about that game, Alan. Purdue got physically destroyed by the Terps on the line of scrimmage, both sides. And then also a historical thing happened that night, which pretty much distracted us all from the football game, that Saddam Hussein was executed that night. So that was like the most exciting thing for me about being at that.
I got to work that into trivia somehow. I don't know how you do that. But yeah, the operative word, two of the worst games I've seen in Purdue football in the last 20 years, maybe not the worst, but there were 7-point efforts against Maryland, in, like you said, in 2006 in the Champs Sports Bowl. And then, of course, the 50-7 game that we keep mentioning, that was good. I remember mostly about that game was the fact that I just gotten a high definition TV and we didn't have it plugged in well enough. So not only did the game go bad because I was in West Lafayette, but also it was fuzzy because our HDMI cord, we never figured out was good. So it was a blurry mess. And it was a mess. I think I fell asleep in the second half. It was just a very, very bad football game.
You did not miss much. It was a blur for Purdue as well.
All right. Yes, no doubt.
Thanks, Al.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
That's a historical look at Purdue and Maryland.
Designing and building since 1968, T&W has changed the way people think about construction. T&W's three-stage approach to designing and building is unmatched throughout the construction industry. Learn more about T&W's people, passion, and projects at twdesignbuild.com.
Broadcasting from Gold and Black World headquarters north of Purdue's campus, this is the Gold and Black Radio pregame show.
Let's bring Tom back in to talk a little bit of matchups and get his prediction as well for this Purdue and Maryland game. Tom, whenever we think it's going to be a track meet, somehow it turns into being like a 14-10 score somewhere middle of the third quarter or something like that. Is there any chance this game does not like just go berserk back and forth up and down the field?
I guess there always is a chance. I guess I just don't envision that, especially if we get a healthier version of Aiden O'Connor, which I think we anticipate, given what Jeff Brom has said this week. And also, Kylie's had a full week of practice. Of course, going into the Minnesota game, he really only got on the practice field until Thursday, very late in the week. So, again, more schooled, more practice, and healthier Aiden O'Connell coupled with that Maryland offense and Tagovailoa, their quarterback. I guess I can't buy you selling me the fact it could be a low-scoring game, but I think we could be in store for like a 35-30 type of a game.
He's been a good quarterback. He does turn the ball over a little bit. I don't know what the numbers say this year. He has turned it over a little bit during his career. Purdue got 3 interceptions last week. Seems to me like there might be an opportunity there with a defense for the Boilermakers that has been able to turn teams over. That maybe Purdue could do that in this game. Now, Purdue's defense could also tackle a little bit better in the secondary. It was sort of a mixed bag, wasn't it, last week for the secondary? Man, they missed tackles, and you're just like, guys, just wrap up, says the guy with a back injury sitting on his couch at home. But then, they counter that by making some great plays, obviously defensively, that really changed the game as well. Could be a similar deal on Saturday, it feels like, because this is a quick Terp team, but maybe you have an opportunity to turn them over also.
Yeah. Boy, you talked about the turnovers last week. The Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week was from Purdue, Cam Allen, with the 2 interceptions. One in the end zone, went right through the hands of a gopher into Cam's waiting arms. And, of course, Cam had that game sealer at the very end. And it's been an opportunistic defense, Kyle. I think overall Purdue's defense is better than Maryland's. I think the strength of Maryland's defense is its secondary. I think Purdue's is its line, that depth up front, Kyle. Don't underestimate that depth up front. I think they can get after the Maryland quarterback. I'm not sure how much you want to blitz him, though. I think still you want to try to keep him in the pocket. Don't turn your back on him. Let him rip off some big runs. But, again, just try to rush 4. Maybe play some zone and make that guy really be a quarterback and read defenses and try to get balls into tight windows. So Ron English is going to have to be creative. And, again, turnovers, like you said, Kyle, could be the real key here to victory. Which team can win that battle could be the team that wins the game, too.
You would hope that Purdue would hold on to the ball a little bit better. I mean, Aiden O'Connell floated a few. That's part of the reason why we felt like he just wasn't, at 100%. You could just tell that the ball didn't have sort of the same velo and maybe the same accuracy as well. So perhaps he's a little bit sharper. When he's on, he tends not to turn the ball over. And so I maybe that's an avenue for Purdue to make up those 3 points that they are an underdog here in this one over at Maryland. Yeah,
you're right. And don't forget about special teams. Maryland has a very good kicker.
They do, yeah. That guy's good.
Purdue, it was good to see. Yeah, he's very good. And Purdue got Mitchell Finran sort of back on track as well. Jack Ansell's been punting the ball with a plum. And then the return game, Kyle, I guess we're still waiting. Maybe this is the Saturday where Charlie Jones really makes a difference in the return game and maybe takes one to the house, which proves to be the difference in the ball game. So that could be the battle that determines this thing when it's all said and done, or special teams. Just a good battle. Maryland's 4-1, Kyle. They beat Michigan State last week. They have a win over a pretty solid SMU team as well. Both these teams have an upward trajectory. So it's going to be a fun battle of wills.
Who you got?
I'm going Boilers. I had 30-28. I think they find a way to do it. I do think they win the turnover battle. I think because Aiden O'Connell is healthy again and they have some of that offensive balance with their ground game. I think that's going to be enough to keep Maryland off balance for Purdue to get out of there with a W.
Yeah, I like a high-scoring game. I've got Purdue 35-31. I think Purdue just wins in a shootout. I think Aiden O'Connell has the edge. I think Purdue likes going on the road for whatever reason. This Purdue team likes to be on the road, and I think it has confidence there. Aiden O'Connell plays well, being a little bit healthier this week and with a full week of practice. And I think the difference is, you said it earlier, I think the difference is that Purdue's defense is a little bit better than Maryland's defense. And so maybe with everything else being equal, that is the thing that puts Purdue over the edge.
Yeah, Purdue's won 5 of their last 6 Big Ten road games, Kyle. Really uncanny, like you talked about. They're road warriors, and sometimes you get that circle of mentality. It's that circle of the wagons mentality when you go on the road, and certainly Purdue's really been able to really cultivate that for the last couple of years.
Thank you, Tom. Have a good trip.
Take care, buddy.
All right, that'll do it for the podcast for this week. If you like the podcast, be sure to give us 5 stars, leave a comment as well. We do appreciate the support of our sponsors. Also, for Tom Dienhart, Brian Newberg, and Alan Krupik, I'm Kyle Charters. Thanks for listening. This is Gold and Black Radio.